Good Vach. A good Chodesh in the next day or two. Thank you very much. I didn't know that you were such a fan. As appropriate, I'll begin with a Crown Heights story. Approximately in 1947, the Rebbe, who was not yet Rebbe, was called the Ramash. Son-in-law of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And much of what the Rebbe did those years is actually not that known. But here and there we pick up different stories. So I heard this story from a long-time Crown Heights resident, Rab Shimshon Stock, the Tevye of Crown Heights, one of the Tevyes. And he was then a student, and the Rebbe made a kfiyas with him, an organized time to study together every Motzei Shabbos, around now. They would learn for 15 minutes or half an hour. I believe it was Gemara. I don't know how long it lasted, but it was there for a while. Anyway, one Saturday night, one Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe is waiting for him, and waiting and waiting. He doesn't show up. The Rebbe went out on the porch of 770 outside, and he sees Shimshon running to the subway station. And the Rebbe calls him over and says, "I've been waiting here for you. We have a scheduled time to study." He says, "Rabbi, tonight I have something much more important. I can't do it." Much more important? What could be more important than studying Torah? Trust me, it's more important. I can't tell you, but it's more important. The Rebbe said to him, "It's not fair. I designated this time. At least tell me what it is." So he said, "Yeah, the Brooklyn Dodgers are playing the New York Yankees at Ebbets Field, which is another Crown Heights mainstay that was here till 1955, on Bedford Avenue, Rogers Avenue, Bedford Avenue, and Crown. Now it's Ebbets Field. Now it's a whole complex." And the Rebbe said to him the following words. He said, "So, how much is it?" Oh, one more thing, I forgot to mention. He said to the Rebbe, "And if you like, I can get you an extra ticket and you'll come along." Oh, the Rebbe respectfully declined. And the Rebbe said to him, "How much do the tickets cost?" So what was it then in the 40s? It must have been 5 cents, 6 cents. And the Rebbe said, "So you're telling me you're paying this and this amount of money to go do what? To come into a big stadium and watch how other people play the game. I'm offering you for free, completely for free, to be a player in the game." Shimshon told me that he declined the offer. And literally with tears in his eyes, he said, this is now years later, he says, "I'm still watching other people play the game, and never took up the Rebbe's offer, be a player in the game." So when I was first invited to share a few words here, I didn't really think it was my place, even though I live in Crown Heights, but I always saw myself more of an international citizen, with all respect. And at the same time, however, we know the way the Rebbe invested his life and declared this community as Kan Tziva Hashem Esabroche, and literally went to war in the 60s when there were the tremendous urban changes going on in this New York as well as many other cities across the country through the civil rights movements and other shifts. So I stand here, as it was mentioned, as a chayzer, as a person who sat at the feet of the Rebbe, and share a few words of how we can be players in the game regarding this community, which is actually an international community. As we see now, more than ever, how many people visit, And the actual, I don't like the word gentrification, whatever that's a euphemism for, but how this community has been transformed over the last decade, last few years. So I was born in 1956, St. Mark's Avenue. That's another side of Eastern Parkway, north, which for many years, probably more, I don't know if you know this, but for many years, once things changed, which I'll share with in a moment, became a place no one ever went north of Eastern Parkway. And I went to yeshiva, also north of Eastern Parkway, in a place called Bedford and Dean, literally Bedford Avenue and Dean Street. Due to the changes that took place, especially in the 60s, we had to move. And we ended up moving to Sullivan Place. I don't even know if you know where that is. Well, it's also going through a renaissance. Sullivan Place, as you go down Nostrand Avenue, the street ends right there in Nostrand. To the right, there's a little park there. And we lived there a number of years. I remember this vividly as a child coming home from summer camp. It was probably 1966. The entire block, which was all Jewish, all white, everybody had moved out. And summer was a very convenient time. Because that way, no one asking questions, everyone anyways more or less away in the mountains, wherever. Came back, we were the only Jews left in the block. And we were a tenant by a Lou family, I remember. And I was a kid, what do I know? I remember asking my mother, what had happened? What happened to everybody? And I slowly picked it up. That what happened was that in the 50s and the 40s, this community was, I can't say all Jewish, but many Jews. You meet people everywhere. Oh, Crown Heights, yeah, my father lived there, I lived there, blah, blah. Which street? We all know the streets. And then major changes happened. Without going into all the details, there was a major exodus. Bobov had its central headquarters here, other Chassidish Kreisen. There were even secular Jews. I remember going with my uncle, Miftzayim, on Utica Avenue and Eastern Parkway, Sukkot, to bench Lulav and Esrog with Eden. Because many Jews were secular. On Kingston Avenue, and I don't want to say anything negative, but many stores were open on Shabbos that were owned by Jews, run by Jews. I'm saying it just to give you a complexion of what was going on in this community. The Rebbe would come out from Farbrengen, the streets were packed with people who didn't even know who the Rebbe was. Because he was like one small minority in a large white community. So I like to do research. So I went to look around and say, like, what happened in this place? You always want to know who walked here in these streets before we did. So we know the Frierdiker Rebbe came in 1940, Tafshin, and within a few months settled here. They bought 770. It was a private hospital. Everyone knows that story. But before that, what was going on in the 30s and the 20s? So I don't know if you know this, but Crown Heights was once called Crow Hill. Crow Hill. Because it's on a hill. Indians actually lived here a long time ago. Some of them were pretty radical, which explains a lot of things going on in this community. No names. And obviously when the whites began to come over to this country, first the French and then the Spanish and then the British, things began to change. Crow Hill it was called because there were a lot of crows. Crows are birds. In Hebrew it's an erev. Erev is a gvuradike bird. It's considered, Chassidus calls an erev achzori even, cruel. So there were a lot of crows, and there was a hill. When you look down Kingston Avenue and Brooklyn and all the main avenues, they are a hill. And as a matter of fact, the water would run down to a little river, which was on Lefferts Avenue. And that's why if you look at those homes, the ones before they're rebuilt, they look like shacks. Because that's where the servants lived. Because that's where the horses were in stables. And this doesn't in any way reflect anyone living on Lefferts Avenue. I'm just telling you what existed here 70 years ago, 80 years ago. And that's where the horses would go drink. Eastern Parkway and President Street were the places where there were the affluent New Yorkers. That's why the subway was built here. The people with money decided that they wanted the subway where they are. So Crow Hill ultimately became Crown Heights. And the Rebbe actually talked about this. In Tov Mem Beis, there's a sikha from the Rebbe about Crown Heights. And the Rebbe always connected everything to Torah, Crown Heights. So where in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos do you have a remez to the word Crown Heights? Anybody? Oh, we have a Talmud Chacham in the room. Talmud Chacham Areis, you know that one, right? I'm not going to tell that joke. Yeah. I'm not going to say your name. Everyone knows who he is. He's the guy who's in all the pictures. We'll introduce yourself. So the Rebbe spoke in Tov Mem Beis, the Mishnah, Shleish Ksarim Heim, Kesser Teira, Kesser Kuna, Kesser Malchus, and then what's the last statement? The Kesser Shem Tov, Eila al Gabehem. The crown is heights. That's Eila al Gabehem. It becomes the height above the other three. So why doesn't it say Arba Ksarim Heim when you're counting four? Because a good name, a good reputation is something you cannot just purchase or acquire. Kesser Teira, you can through Yegiya, you learn Teira. Kesser Kuna is through birth. Kesser Malchus as well. Kesser Shem Tov, you cannot buy it. When you have the other three, then another fourth dimension emerges. And the Rebbe compared that to Crown Heights. Crown Heights. So it's a real ishapche from Crow Hill. And look at the names of the streets. President Street, Crown Street, Eastern Parkway, Empire Boulevard. It's all Malchusdik. All Malchusdik names. And these were names given to these streets before Chabad moved here and didn't have to change any names. So we are in a community that has gone through many changes and reflect many changes. I remember standing right here. It was a higher stage. When you remember when Hol HaTorah was expanded to that extension. So there was a Chanukah Habayis. It was a big event. Mayor Giuliani came. They asked me to be the MC. And Mayor Giuliani was then right after the big pogrom and the riots here in Crown Heights in 1991, in the summer of 91. So I remember in introducing him, I said the following, and I think it's something that most people don't even are not aware of, even ourselves. I said, you have to thank the Lubavitcher Rebbe and of course the community that the Rebbe leads, because they changed New York. When all the communities were falling, literally, and there was the major white exodus to the suburbs and to Long Island, wherever it was. And literally community after community, Brownsville, Bushwick, East New York. And it was coming, the wave was coming to Crown Heights. And Crown Heights also suffered greatly. Dramatic changes. The Jewish community, the white community. And it was the Rebbe that drew a line in the sand and said, At Kan, we will not move. Even though, as we all know, the Rebbe was pressured and convinced, go to a better place, you can build a whole community. Shumei for not. And because the Rebbe didn't budge, obviously none of the Chassidim did. And the Rebbe made it very clear in the 60s, behind the scenes, worked very hard to try to convince other Jewish leaders not to leave. And he told them, everything, the Rebbe actually used the words, real estate is a cycle. It's all psychological. Right now there's a panic. And unfortunately, it's very bad to speak negatively about Jews, but there were Jews who tried to take advantage of the panic. That's how all those blocks emptied, including Sullivan Place in my childhood. Because they would come to Jewish homes, to Jewish homeowners and say, if you don't sell now, the prices are going to plummet. Of course, they had only one intention, to make some money. And people panicked. And the panic is, psychological panic, becomes contagious. And the Rebbe fought behind the scenes. Finally, in 1969, Pesach, the Rebbe decided to speak publicly. It's published. The Rebbe edited it and explained that. Why is he getting involved? He Bechlal doesn't get involved in Piskei Dinim. He's not a community leader. But he sees what's going on. And he thinks that people will interpret his silence as acquiescing and agreeing. And the Rebbe came out. You could read it in Chelik Vav, Lekutei Sichos, in the Hisofis, a whole essay developed from that Sikha from Pesach that year, 1969. So I didn't say all this when Giuliani was up there, but I said that the Rebbe, a line in the sand, and he did not budge. And he developed and said, even to his own chassidim who also were skeptical, what do we do here? I remember when Kingston Avenue was boarded up. It was depressing. Because everything was, everything. No one had any confidence. When the Rebbe said to chassidim, invest. So they thought it's an inyan, maybe shalamuna. But the Rebbe said, no, I guarantee you'll make money if you invest because now the prices are low and it will go up again. I don't know how many people completely took that at face value. There were a few, but usually we dismiss them as mishagoyim. They ended up becoming quite wealthy. Then the Rebbe developed Shebro, which was in Hebrew Chevra, shares that everybody should join in. The Rebbe tried all kinds of methods, and he didn't really get many people who agreed. They agreed mitzad the Rebbe. The Rebbe zokt, af benton, Kabbalah sale. Like the story with Shmuel Schneider and Isha Churgan, they're learning Likutei Torah, and they says in Likutei Torah that 2/3 of the world is covered in water. And one of them looks at the other and says, wherever I look, I only see land. Where's the water? So the other one says, Alter Rebbe zokt, af makabel zayin Kabbalah sale. That 2/3 is covered in water. That's how it was seen. But if you think about it in retrospect, look, today. People ask me, what do you think about all that's going on here? It's just terrible. I said, terrible. It's mama's the kima of the Rebbe's dream and vision. He wanted a community that was thriving. What do you think the Rebbe wanted in those years? And the Rebbe understood exponential growth and generational growth. And as a result, you see today, and I only can imagine the Rebbe having nachas. And it's not necessarily due to our direct efforts, to be very blunt. It happened. Very hard even to explain how this change took place. So you look at it and you say, the Rebbe Shchuna, there was a time when people were very depressed where the prices was down, nobody was making money in stores, and today, Kingston Avenue and other streets like that, you could open up another day an eatery and you make money. All the other eateries will tell you no, but for obvious reasons. So I want to say this. Since I'm not part of the establishment, maybe I could speak a little off the record, since official told me that I should make sure to give some marching orders. I'm not here to order anybody. I'm talking to myself like you. I see it this way, and I hope you agree. And if not, you won't invite me next time for the 100th anniversary in Yerushalayim. Yes, there is a bunch of technical things running a community council and dealing with the community, especially one that everyone here is a general and a president and so on. But at the same time, there's a tremendous potential. And we can't think small. It's a community that every day sees new people coming in. You have tours going on. And these are talking about Jews and non-Jews. Almost, are we giving a standing ovation for, yeah. Oh. For Yoni Katz, yeah. You have almost every day shluchim bringing their guests. And you can see it. And there's, of course, the 6, 7, 10 times a year, we have an influx of maybe 5,000, 10,000 people coming in. Kinus HaShluchim, Kinus HaShluchis, Tishrei, Gimel Tammuz, Alf Nisan, Yud Shvat. I mean, are we capitalizing on all this? I mean, it's happening. And I understand there's a certain economic inflow from it all. But how are we capitalizing on it? I see, and I'm potentially here to have 10 Chabad houses in Crown Heights. On my block, right across the street here, there's a bunch of Jews living here that are, so to speak, as the Rebbe would say, le'esat, are still secular in some way. And I'm wondering, and I say this to this distinguished table here, the leaders. Leadership could be in a very mitzumtzimdik, in a very narrow way, and it could be in a big way. We want to truly do justice to the Rebbe and his vision. This is an international city. In New York, which is an international city. I mean, why shouldn't we have every Shabbos 500 people from Manhattan coming here for a Shabbaton? Everyone's intrigued. It's a very interesting, exotic place. You have the Chassidim, you have the fish store, You have a matzah bakery. They go into this, all looks pretty strange from their perspective. That's that side of it. And then you can infuse them. We have brain trust. You have people who are teachers and speakers. You have thousands of talmidim and talmidis. It's a vibrant place. So I would suggest, and this was not put on my speaking points, you didn't, right? That she used the 50th anniversary to live up and beyond the Rebbe's expectations, and perhaps use Crown Heights as a springboard, that it can really live up to its name, Heights, Crown Heights, Malchus. Crown is Keser. Keser, Malchus, Eila, Ada Keser, as the Rebbe explained in that Sikha. That to truly be a shining example of what a powerful, diverse community looks like. We have different opinions, but there's a certain harmony. Where we host all types of programs, instead of it being narrow just as one person's perspective. This isn't a ghetto. This is the Rebbe, the leader of the world's community. And when the Frierdiker Rebbe established, he wanted Dafka to be in New York, not in some little town. And we understand today why. That was 1940, 80 years ago. This year it's 80 years. And then 10 years later, the Rebbe assumes leadership. It's 1950 now. And that's when the changes started happening. And the Rebbe in the vision saw that despite the ups and downs and times that seemed very down, that it would return again, maybe even stronger than ever before. It's interesting, a lot of things that the Rebbe wanted, he did not see Begashmias before Chav Zayin Oder, before Gimel Tammuz, but he sees it now. And I can tell you what Giuliani told me afterwards. Because I said, so you can thank the Rebbe, because had the Rebbe not made that line in the sand, what would have happened? God forbid, Crown Heights would have also fallen. Then it would have gone to Park Slope. And who knows where it would stop. Is that a heckler or agreeing? I don't know. I think she didn't get fish. That's the way they're telling me my time is over? What's this? So let me... So Giuliani, Mayor Giuliani, who, as you know, was the mayor after Mayor Dinkins. Under Dinkins' watch is what happened here that summer of 91. Many of you were here that summer. I remember exactly what happened that tragic night, the killing of Yankel Rosenbaum. And Mayor Giuliani can be credited for turning things around, the toughness on crime, and then New York changing dramatically. But behind everything, there's no doubt in my mind, and even not Beruchnius, but Gashmi's, the Rebbe's confidence, and living up to it. It wasn't just talk. Living in Crown Heights with all the dangers and all the challenges, the Rebbe made it very clear, and the Chassidim listened, that was a result, that resulted in a change of the entire course of events. So we're here as Chassidim, as members of the Crown Heights, however we call ourselves, to create a revolution. I would feel not doing justice to the Rebbe if we expected anything less. I know many people say, mi ani, mo ani. The Rebbe already bavarned that in the Maimer Bosalagani, that's not the case. The Eibishter chose us to be here. And therefore we have unbelievable keiches. And to diminish our capacity or our potential is really, literally defying the Rebbe's own confidence in us and in this community. So I want to wish everybody has the brachas, but especially people who are chosen to be leaders, to live up to what leaders should really be, even greater than what you've done till now. Let's put it that way. And be a shining example of what the Rebbe would want from individuals, from a community. And we really, obviously all are ready to march to the Geula, but like the Rebbe said, while we're here, we have to behave and build in full capacity and full potential. And then, together with the Rebbe, march to the Geula Amitis V'Ashlema, and then all the Bate Knesiyas and Bate Midrashas, all the shuls, all the institutions, and all good Jewish homes will also be transplanted at Eretz Yisrael. So we should be zeicha as we're coming out to the 70th anniversary of Yud Shvat. As the Rebbe said at the end of the Maimer, have a niske zenzich mit dem Rebbe dalamata masar tfachim neshama beguf v'hu yigalenu. A gute Woche. Thank you very much.